Welcome to Mindset Matters Book Club YouTube channel. Please subscribe and like to hear new book summaries.
It's great to be here. And honestly, for this deep dive, we are tackling a topic that feels like, well, the holy grail of human experience for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the kind of thing we all chase, sometimes without even knowing what to call it.
Totally. We're talking about the zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask you, and everyone listening right now,
Mm-hmm.
you know that feeling, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
It's those fleeting moments where everything just clicks. Time almost feels like it slows down. You're performing at your absolute peak.
Right.
Whether that's in a sport or maybe writing a report or even just a really, really engaging conversation. But the key is, it doesn't feel like you're forcing it.
No, it feels natural.
Yeah, it's like the music is playing itself or the words are just tumbling out in the perfect order.
It's that magical state where your action and your awareness just merge completely. Athletes, they call it the zone. Musicians might call it the groove.
And psychologists have a word for it.
They do. They've settled on the term flow.
But here's the problem with flow. And this is really why we wanted to get into this specific book today.
Yeah.
For most of us, flow feels like a complete accident.
Yeah, like lightning in a bottle.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
feels like a lightning strike. You just cross your fingers and hope you get lucky on the day of the big presentation or, the championship game.
We tolerate the grind.
We do. We tolerate the daily grind, the stress, the friction, just praying that one of these magic moments might descend upon us.
Right. We treat it as this serendipitous event, something that happens to us, not something we can create. It's almost like the weather. You hope for a sunny day, but you don't control the sun.
But what if it wasn't an accident? What if you could actually manufacture that state on demand? And that is the massive promise of the book we're diving into today, How to Find Flow by Dr. Cameron Norsworthy. And what I love about this is that it isn't just a theoretical study. The author frames it as a manual. He's arguing you can essentially hack your own psychology to find flow consistently.
And Norsworthy is really the right person to guide us here. He's not just some academic sitting in an ivory tower, theorizing about neurons and dopamine.
No, he's in the trenches.
He is. He's known as a flow coach. He has a background in sports psychology, sure, but he's worked with world champions, with CEOs, with elite performers right where it matters. His whole career is about bridging that gap between the hard science, what's actually happening in the brain, and the practical application of it on the field or in the boardroom.
So I think the mission for our deep dive today is pretty clear. We want to debunk this myth that flow is just for the Kobe Bryants or the Mozarts of the world.
Right, the geniuses.
Yeah. We want to hand you the keys to Norsworthy's framework, which he calls Ready, Steady, Flow. It's a system designed to make this peak state reproducible.
It's all about moving from hoping for flow to designing for flow.
So let's unpack this. And to really understand the stakes here, I think we have to start with Norsworthy's own personal story. Because it was not a straight line to success for him, was it?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. His obsession with flow was actually born out of a very deep, very painful personal conflict.
Okay.
Norsworthy started his career as a junior tennis pro. And he was elite. I mean, really good. And on the court, he experienced those moments of magic we were just talking about.
The zone.
The zone. He describes shots that felt like they played themselves. He talks about seeing the fuzz on the tennis ball in, high definition, time slowing down, just classic flow experiences where the rest of the world just falls away.
It sounds incredible. But off the court, his life was a totally different story. It was almost like he was two different people.
It was a nightmare for him. He had a crippling stammer and a severe, severe fear of public speaking.
Wow.
He describes feeling naked without his tennis racket. Tennis was his escape. It was his sanctuary where he could express himself fluently because he couldn't do it with words. The court was the only place he felt safe, the only place he felt like he could be himself without this huge barrier.
And then the tragedy hits. At just 17, he suffers a career-ending elbow injury.
Which is devastating for any athlete, but you can imagine for him it was. It was catastrophic. He didn't just lose a sport.
He lost his escape.
He lost his only access to that flow state. He lost his shield. He spiraled into a depression, ended up in rehab, really trying to deal with this complete loss of identity. He was stripped of the one place he felt competent. Just imagine having one outlet where you feel like a superhero and then it's gone, and you're left only with the thing that makes you feel broken.
That's brutal. But this is where the story takes this almost cinematic turn. He's traveling in Peru, trying to find himself, and he has this massive aha moment watching a busker.
It's such a powerful image. He's in an ancient Inca village surrounded by all this history and poverty, and he sees a man playing the harmonica.
Okay.
But this busker, he has amputated arm stubs. He's physically lost so much, and he has every reason to be struggling or miserable, yet the music he's playing is just mesmerizing. The busker is completely lost in the rhythm, completely in the zone.
And Norsworthy realizes, wait a minute, that's the feeling. That is the exact feeling I had in tennis.
Exactly. The light bulb goes on. He realized that the state of flow wasn't tied to the tennis court. It wasn't about the racket or the ball or the opponent. It was a state of being.
A psychological state.
A psychological state that this busker was accessing despite his incredible physical limitations. And the thought was, well, if the busker can do it with a harmonica and no arms, maybe Norsworthy could apply that same state to his speaking, to his anxiety, to the rest of his life.
That is the pivot point. Flow isn't about the activity. It's about your internal state. So let's define it properly, because we throw this word around all the time. I'm in the flow, go with the flow. But scientifically, what are we actually talking about? Is it dopamine? Is it focus?
Well, Norsworthy moves us away from the very academic, very complex definitions you might see from the godfather of flow, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Right, I've heard that name. He had a big, complicated model, didn't he?
A 9-dimensional model, yeah. And while Norsworthy respects that work immensely, he wants to simplify it for application. He defines flow as an intrinsically rewarding state of absorption in a task in which a high sense of control feels more effortless than usual.
Okay, I noticed in the notes he puts a hyphen in effortless. We have to talk about that because that little hyphen is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It's on the work.
But let's break down those 3 core pillars he mentions first. Absorption, effortless control, and intrinsic reward.
Right. So absorption is the first one. This is just undistracted attention. It's the merging of action and awareness. You aren't thinking about doing the thing, you are simply doing it.
So the chatter in your head stops.
It stops. You're not checking your phone, you're not thinking about dinner, you're not worrying about the electric bill. You are all in.
It's like when you're watching a movie that is so good, you just completely forget you're in a theater. You forget you even have a body.
That's it. Total immersion. The second pillar is effortless control, and this is where people get confused.
Yeah, because flow doesn't mean easy, right?
Yeah.
If I'm sitting on the couch eating chips, that's effortless, but it's not flow.
This is the critical distinction. That hyphen is key. It does not mean there is no effort. If you're running a marathon in a flow state, your body is exerting a massive amount of effort.
Of course.
Your heart rate is up, your muscles are burning, your metabolism is firing at max capacity. But the control of that effort feels smooth. It feels fluid. There's no internal friction, no second guessing, no fighting with yourself. It is the effortless application of effort.
That is a huge aha moment for me. Because sometimes I think flow means I'm just sitting back and it's happening to me. But it's not that the task is easy. It's that my command over it is frictionless.
Precisely. It's high efficiency. Think of a master carpenter sawing a piece of wood. They're using force, but it looks like they're cutting through butter. That's effortless control.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the third pillar is intrinsic reward. You're doing it for the love of the activity itself. You're not doing it for the trophy or the paycheck or the applause. Those things might come later, but in the moment of flow, the activity is its own reward. The joy is in the doing.
So we have the definition. We know what the target is. Now we need to understand why it's so hard to hit that target so often. Norsworthy talks about the inner game and this battle between two brains. This feels like the foundational science we need to grasp before we get to the how-to.
It is, absolutely. To understand why we struggle, Norsworthy simplifies neuropsychology into 2 main players, the thinking brain and the being brain.
Okay, so the thinking brain is that the voice in my head that will not shut up at 3 a.m. replaying an awkward conversation from like 2012.
That is the one. Technically, it's the explicit system. It's your conscious, analytical, and very slow processor. It's the part of you that critiques, that judges, that doubts, and tries to figure things out. It operates on language and logic. And look, it's great for planning a holiday or doing your taxes. You need that slow, analytical processing. But it is terrible for high-performance execution.
And the being brain.
That's the implicit system. It's fast, intuitive, and automated. It's where your muscle memory lives. It's where flow lives.
That's interesting.
When you catch a falling glass before you even consciously realize it slipped, that's your being brain. It reacts milliseconds faster than your conscious mind can even process. It's the autopilot that knows how to fly the plane better than the pilot does.
So the conflict, And the reason we aren't constantly in flow is that we try to use the thinking brain to do the being brain's job.
Exactly. We try to force performance. We tell ourselves, okay, don't mess up this sentence, or make sure your arm angle is perfect on this shot. That's the thinking brain interfering.
It's getting in the way.
It is. It actually blocks the being brain from taking over. It introduces signal noise. Think of it like a CEO coming down to the factory floor and trying to micromanage the hands of a skilled worker. The worker is going to fumble because the CEO is in the way.
That makes so much sense. But why do we do that? Why does our brain try to sabotage us? If the being brain is so good at its job, why doesn't the thinking brain just, step aside? Norsworthy connects this to our evolution, right?
He does. He calls these evolutionary errors. Our brains, at their core, they aren't designed for flow or happiness. They're designed for survival.
Okay.
They're threat detection machines. For thousands and thousands of years, missing a threat meant death.
But we don't have saber-toothed tigers chasing us anymore.
No, we don't. So that threat detection system turns inward. We predict social humiliation or failure or mistakes. Our brain equates getting kicked out of the tribe with death. So public speaking anxiety feels like a life or death threat because, evolutionarily speaking, social ostracization was a death sentence.
It's the what if I stutter thought that Norsworthy had.
Yes. And here's the kicker. The brain is a predictive engine. It's always trying to guess what happens next. If you predict, I'm going to stutter, you create a self-fulfilling prophecy of stress.
Oh.
You activate the thinking brain to try and fix the stutter before it happens. That effort creates tension, and that tension is what causes the stutter. It's this vicious cycle. You predict a negative outcome, so you create the very conditions for that outcome to happen.
So the goal of this book and this whole framework is to break that cycle, to quiet the thinking brain so the being brain can drive. Norsworthy breaks this down into ready, steady, flow. Let's start with phase 1, ready. This is all about mindset.
Yeah, ready is all about your foundational approach to the challenge before you even start prepping for it. Norsworthy uses what he calls the flow model, which is basically a bell curve. On one side of that curve, you have the red zone.
Red is bad, I'm guessing?
In this context, yeah. The red zone is where you have too much stress, anxiety, worry, or on the flip side, boredom. It's all friction. It's the mindset of what he calls a restrictor.
A restrictor.
You are restricting your natural ability because you're too tight, you're too worried about the outcome, you're playing not to lose instead of playing to win.
And the blue zone.
That's the sweet spot, the top of the curve. You're relaxed, you're composed, maybe even a little playful. This is the actualizer mindset. You are actualizing your potential. You aren't gripping the steering wheel too tight.
I really love the idea of self-leadership here. The first step isn't just try harder. It's actually checking in with yourself. Am I in the red or the blue right now?
And he offers a really simple technique for this, the 3 R's. Recognize, reset, and rewire. First, you have to recognize that you're in the red. Most of us just push through the stress, grind our teeth.
Power through.
Norsworthy says, stop, admit it. I am stressed. I am tight. Then reset. This can be physical. Maybe take a deep breath, shake out your arms, physically change your state, step away from the computer for a minute. And then you rewire your thinking.
And the main tool for rewiring is this mantra he gives us: learn, grow, flow.
It's so simple, but it's really effective. When things go wrong, or when you feel that pressure rising, the thinking brain wants to critique. It wants to say, you idiot, why did you do that? Or you're going to fail. That just keeps you stuck in the red.
Right.
The rewire is to switch the question to, what can I learn from this?
So you shift from an outcome focus to a growth focus.
Exactly. If your goal is don't look stupid, you will be anxious because you can't perfectly control how you look. That goal is fragile. But if your goal is learn from this experience, you can stay in the blue zone even if you make a mistake because you're still achieving your goal of learning. You become anti-fragile.
There's a great story in the book about a cricketer named Kai. I think this really illustrates the point for anyone listening who thinks this all sounds a bit too abstract.
Oh, yeah, the Kai story is perfect. So Kai was this talented cricketer, but he was dreading batting. He was terrified of getting out. Every single ball coming at him felt like a threat to his ego.
It was life or death for his reputation.
Totally. Norsworthy worked with him to change his goal. So instead of don't get out, the goal became learn from every single ball.
And that tiny little shift changed everything.
Completely. Because if you miss the ball, or even if you get out, you haven't failed. You've just received data, you learned something about the bowler, or maybe about your stance. It just took all the pressure off. He went from the red zone to the blue zone, and ironically, by not caring as much about the outcome, his performance just skyrocketed.
He shifted from trying to be the best, which is all about ego, to being my best, which is about the process.
That is such a key distinction. Being my best versus being the best. One is within your control. The other really isn't. You can't control if someone else is better than you on a given day.
But you can always control if you're learning.
Precisely. And that feeling of control is an absolute prerequisite for flow.
Okay, so that's ready. We've got our mindset right. We are aiming for the blue zone. Now we move to phase 2, steady. This is the preparation phase.
All right, this is where we get proactive. Norsworthy talks about building what he calls a flow blueprint.
Now, visualization is common advice, right? You hear it all the time. Visualize yourself winning the race. Visualize the audience clapping. But Norsworthy says that's actually wrong, or at least it's not enough. Why is that?
Yeah, this is a big one. Most people visualize the outcome. Standing on the podium, holding the trophy. And sure, that makes you feel good for a second. You get a little dopamine hit. But it doesn't help your brain navigate the actual performance.
It could make you more anxious.
It could, because you're focused on the result, not the action. Norsworthy says you need to visualize the process, and more specifically, the feeling of flow.
So not just seeing the ball go in the hoop, but actually feeling the ball, leaving your fingertips effortlessly.
That's it, exactly. You have to include the sensory details, the feeling of absorption, the feeling of effortlessness. What you're doing is training your brain's predictive processing, that same system that usually predicts threats, to predict flow instead. You're laying down a neural track for your brain to follow when the real moment comes. You are simulating the sensation of the being brain taking over.
It's like rehearsing the play, not just the standing ovation at the end.
Yeah.
But what if the task is huge? Like writing a book or launching a company. You can't just flow for 6 months straight.
No, of course not. That's a recipe for burnout. For those big, scary goals, he suggests what he calls staffs, short-term achievable flows.
Staffs.
Yeah. If you have a massive project, it's totally overwhelming. Your brain sees, write a book, and it just panics. The idea is to break it down into tiny, achievable moments where you can find flow. Don't try to flow through a whole year-long project. Flow through the next email. Flow through the first 10 minutes of the meeting. It's about shrinking the horizon to something manageable.
Let's talk about another concept from this section. Invite the intensity. This seems really counterintuitive. Usually we're told to calm down, drink chamomile tea, reduce our stress. Norsworthy says we should invite it.
This goes back to the conditions required for flow. Flow happens at the intersection of high skill and high challenge. If a task is too easy, we get bored. We drift.
Our mind wanders.
Right. And if it's too hard, we get anxious. We panic. We need what he calls optimal challenge.
So we need to be slightly out of our depth, a little bit uncomfortable.
He calls it being unearthed. You want to be just slightly outside your comfort zone. You need that intensity to demand your full attention. If you're totally comfortable, your thinking brain has time to wander and worry and critique. High stakes force you into the present moment.
So the mantra here is pressure is a privilege.
Yes. Instead of fearing the nerves, you reframe them. You tell yourself, this physiological arousal, this heart beating fast, this is not fear. This is fuel. This is the energy I need to get into the zone. You invite the intensity because it's the gateway to flow. It's the rocket fuel. You can't get to space without the explosion.
That is a total game changer for something like public speaking. The shaking hands aren't a sign that I'm about to fail. They're the battery pack turning on.
Exactly. You channel it. You don't try to suppress it.
Okay, one more part of steady is protecting your attention. And this feels very, very relevant to our distracted world.
This is such practical advice. Motivation is the fuel of attention, and you have a limited amount of what he calls attentional bandwidth. If you spend the hour before your big, deep work session scrolling through social media, getting outraged by the news, or answering petty emails,
You're draining the tank.
You're draining your tank. To get steady, you have to be ruthless about protecting your focus before the main event. You just can't expect to jump into a state of flow if you've just fragmented your brain for 45 minutes on TikTok.
It's like eating a bunch of junk food right before you run a marathon. You're just poisoning the performance from the start.
Exactly. You've got to keep the tank full for the main event.
Okay, so we're ready. Our mindset is blue. We're steady. We've visualized the feeling. We've invited the intensity. Now we are in the moment. Phase 3. Flow W, the execution.
This is where the rubber meets the road. How do we actually bridge that gap from the thinking brain to the being brain in the split second of performance?
He gives us some really cool physical techniques here. One is called sensory stacking. I tried this while I was reading the book, and it is surprisingly effective.
It is, isn't it? It's basically a way to jam the signals of the thinking brain. Remember, the thinking brain is verbal. It uses words. The being brain is sensory. It uses feeling.
Right.
You can't really do both at high intensity at the same time. So Norsworthy suggests focusing intensely on 3 external senses simultaneously.
Like right now, I can feel the chair against my back. I can hear the hum of the AC in the room, and I can see the light reflecting off the table.
Right. And if you force your brain to process those 3 sensory inputs at the same time, the inner monologue, the "don't mess this up, you look stupid" voice, it gets drowned out. Yeah. There just isn't enough bandwidth left for the self-criticism. It quiets the noise and anchors you in the now. It's a circuit breaker for overthinking.
And then there's the peripheral vision trick, or as he calls it, triggering a trance.
This is fascinating biology. When we are stressed or in threat mode, our vision physically narrows. We get tunnel vision. That's a sympathetic nervous system response, fight or flight. Your body is locking onto the threat.
So we literally can't see the big picture.
Literally. But the cool thing is, this works both ways. Mental stress causes tunnel vision, but forcing panoramic vision can reduce mental stress. Norsworthy suggests consciously softening your gaze and trying to take in the whole room, specifically paying attention to your peripheral vision while keeping your eyes looking forward. This simple physical act sends a signal back to your brain to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. It tells your brain, we are safe, we are calm. It quiets the inner critic almost immediately.
It's a physiological hack to trick your brain into calmness.
It creates what's called corticomuscular coherence. That's the science term for when the signal from your brain to your muscles has no interference. The static just clears up.
Norsworthy talks about the conflict monitor in the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC.
Yes. The ACC is the part of your brain that is constantly scanning for errors. It's the spell checker. Did I do that right? Was that a mistake? In flow, we want to turn the volume down on the ACC. We want to trust our intuition. We want to let it happen rather than make it happen.
He tells a story about his own return to public speaking that just brings this all together perfectly. It's the mic drop moment, but in a bad way. And it really shows that flow isn't about everything being perfect.
It's such a great example of recovery. He's about to give a talk to hundreds of executives. High stakes. He fumbles the microphone. It drops. You hear that awful feedback screech through the entire room. It's awkward. Total silence.
Oh, that is the classic nightmare scenario. That's usually when the thinking brain takes over and just says, game over, you've ruined it.
Exactly. The red zone panic starts rising immediately. His thinking brain starts screaming at him, you're blowing it. They think you're an idiot. Run away.
So what did he do? How did he handle it?
He used the framework in real time. First, he recognized the red zone. He felt the tension rising. Then he reset. He physically shook out his arms to release that physical tension. He repeated his mantra to himself, learn, grow, flow.
And then he shifted his perspective on the audience.
This is so key. He stopped seeing them as judges, which is a threat, and started seeing them as collaborators, which creates a connection. He used sensory stacking to get out of his head and into his body, and he slipped right into the blue zone. He gave a great talk.
It just proves that flow isn't about everything going perfectly. It's about how you handle it when things inevitably go wrong.
That's resilience. That's the deep resilience mentioned in the book's subtitle. It's the ability to get back to the blue zone quickly. Flow isn't a state of perfection. It's a state of rapid recovery and adaptation.
We're coming into the home stretch here. Section 6 is about living a flow lifestyle. Because Norsworthy argues this isn't just for the big presentation or the grand final.
No, and actually, if you only try to save it for the big moments, you probably won't be able to access it. You need to be flow fit.
Flow fit. I like that. It's like going to the gym for your mindset.
That's exactly what it is. He talks about the awe principle. You can find flow in the mundane, washing the dishes, walking the dog, having a conversation with your partner.
Okay, but how do you find flow while washing dishes? That sounds like a chore.
You apply the same pillars. Absorption. Focus entirely on the warmth of the water, the texture of the bubbles, the squeak of the plate as it comes clean. Effortless control. Move with fluidity. Try to wash them as efficiently as possible without rushing. Intrinsic reward. Enjoy the process of creating cleanliness, not just the result of a clean plate.
And the idea is if you practice these neural pathways on the dishes, they are greased and ready to go when you have to give the big speech.
Precisely. You're training your being brain to take the lead. You are practicing the art of attention. If you can't control your attention while washing a single cup, you certainly won't be able to control it during a crisis.
There's a deeper philosophical point here, too, about the self. Norsworthy says in flow, the me disappears, but the I remains. What does he mean by that?
It's profound. The me is your ego. It's your self-image, your history, your narrative about yourself, your fear of judgment. It's the voice asking, what will they think of me, or am I good enough? In flow, that part of the brain neuroscience shows the default mode network. It just goes quiet.
So you aren't self-conscious anymore.
You aren't conscious of the self at all. But the I, the agent of action, the consciousness that is actually doing the seeing and the doing is hyper-present. When the ego disappears, fear vanishes. Because fear is almost always attached to the protection of the ego. Without the ego, there is only the action. There's only flow.
That connects right back to the busker in Peru. He wasn't thinking about his missing arms or his poverty or his life story. He was just the music.
He is the act itself.
So let's wrap this up. We have covered a lot. Norsworthy's manual for hacking flow gives us a really clear path forward.
It really does. It's a full cycle. You start with ready, get your mindset right, choose the blue zone, use that mantra, learn, grow, flow. Move from trying to be the best to being my best.
Then steady.
Then steady. Prep properly. Visualize the feeling of flow, not just the outcome. Invite the intensity. Remember that pressure is a privilege.
And finally, F-L-O-W.
And finally, F-L-O-W. Execute. Bridge the two brains with sensory awareness. Soften your gaze. Trust the being brain and just let it happen.
It's a comprehensive toolkit. And I think what resonates most with me is this idea that flow isn't some kind of magic. It's biology. And it's accessible to all of us.
It is. And here's a final provocative thought to leave you with, something that really strikes me about this whole philosophy.
Let's hear it.
The book suggests that flow is actually our natural state. It's not something we have to add to ourselves. It's what happens when we finally stop interfering with ourselves. When we strip away the evolutionary error of overthinking, the ego's fear of judgment, and the societal pressure to force results. Flow is what remains.
So we aren't really learning to find flow. We're learning to stop blocking it.
Exactly. And if we stop trying to fix our stress and instead just focus on allowing our natural capacity to emerge, could we not just perform better, but maybe actually cure this modern epidemic of burnout and dissatisfaction? What if the goal of life isn't success, as we typically define it, but simply the depth of the experience itself? What if the goal is just to reside in that blue zone as often as we possibly can?
That is a beautiful thought. The quality of the experience matters more than the outcome of the experience.
It changes everything.
Well, on that note, we are going to sign off. We hope you can find a little bit of flow in your day today, whether you're working, training, or just doing the dishes. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.